The arrest of Sean Diddy Combs is just the tip of the iceberg, another powerful elite figure brought down not because of a sudden outburst of morality from law enforcement, but because too many pieces of the puzzle have fallen into place. The walls are closing in, and this story has deeper roots that link to none other than Jeffrey Epstein, the infamous financier who acted as the ultimate middleman between the ruling elite and their darkest desires. Sean Combs, now sitting behind bars after a grand jury indictment on charges of sex trafficking and racketeering, is alleged to have been running a criminal enterprise for over a decade. This so-called entertainment mogul, much like Epstein, used his position, wealth, and connections to exploit vulnerable women, creating a system of control that has parallels to the same underground network Epstein curated. The victims are not just women forced into grotesque acts. No, the victims are society itself, manipulated by these so-called pillars of culture who use their power to cover up their heinous deeds. What we need to talk about, and what the media refuses to discuss, is how deep this goes. It's no accident that Combs, just like Epstein, cultivated relationships with the global elite. How do you think Combs rose to such prominence in the first place? The music industry is not a breeding ground for philanthropists. It's a breeding ground for control, manipulation, and power brokering. Epstein didn't just serve his own sick desires. He was a broker of secrets, a man who connected the rich and powerful, making sure everyone had dirt on each other to maintain the balance of power. Combs operated in a similar fashion. The freak-offs, as they were called, were elaborate, multi-day events designed to degrade and dominate, a spectacle of exploitation under the guise of excess. Who attended these events? We're only beginning to uncover that, but you better believe it's the same types who were shuttling off to Epstein's island. Business moguls, celebrities, politicians, all engaging in acts they hope never see the light of day. The most chilling part? Combs didn't just use coercion or violence to control these women. He used narcotics, wealth, and the promise of fame. It's all part of the same method of control we've seen time and time again with the elite. Epstein gave the powerful what they wanted and recorded every piece of it for leverage. Combs, it seems, followed in those footsteps, recording the most depraved moments to ensure loyalty through fear. This is about control, pure and simple. Just as Epstein operated his sex trafficking ring to blackmail the rich and powerful, Combs has been doing the same under the cover of fame. The deeper we dig, the more connections between these networks become obvious, and we're about to unravel something much bigger than one man's crimes. Now, we established that Sean Diddy Combs wasn't operating in isolation. His empire of abuse, manipulation, and control mirrored the very mechanisms Jeffrey Epstein used to entrap, exploit, and blackmail the world's most powerful. But here's where it gets even more chilling. These two figures are part of a global network of elites who have preyed upon the vulnerable for decades. What do I mean by global network? Let's dive deeper. Epstein was notorious for his Little Black Book, an address book of names that included billionaires, politicians, and celebrities from across the world. The reason this book is so crucial is that it wasn't just a collection of contacts. It was a map of influence and leverage. Epstein had the goods on these people, and he used it to protect himself and grow his influence. Now, guess who also maintained a similar web of influence? Combs. Think about how many major players in the entertainment industry, producers, executives, artists, rose through the ranks with ties to him. It's all part of the same game of power and control. Sean Combs' alleged involvement in sex trafficking and the production of these so-called freak-offs is straight out of the Epstein playbook. These events weren't just about indulging in depravity, they were rituals of dominance with the added layer of recording for blackmail purposes. This isn't just speculation, it's what the court documents themselves reveal. Combs' use of coercion and threats to control the women in these situations points to an eerily similar structure to Epstein's island, where victims were trafficked and their silence was guaranteed through fear and manipulation. The real question we need to ask ourselves is, why did it take so long to catch him? This isn't just about one man. Epstein got away with his crimes for so long because he had people in high places pulling the strings, making sure justice was never served. The same could be said about Combs. He's been at the top of the entertainment industry for decades, shielded by his wealth, connections, and the powerful who benefited from his silence. When Epstein's island was exposed, it wasn't just Epstein who was on trial. It was the entire system of elites who used their positions of influence to shield themselves from accountability. Now, with Combs facing similar accusations, we see the pattern repeating itself. Those who were close to Epstein had connections far and wide in every industry, including entertainment. We know Epstein courted famous people, models, musicians, actors, who were drawn into his orbit. The connections between Epstein's world and Combs suggest that the entertainment and political elite have been protecting each other for years. So here we are, at the final stage of understanding how Sean Diddy Combs, Jeffrey Epstein, and countless other elites are not just isolated cases, but pieces of a well-coordinated global power structure designed to protect the rich and powerful from ever facing real consequences for their actions. The scandals surrounding both of these men reveal something far more insidious about how deep corruption goes in our society. Let's take a step back and look at how these networks operate. When Epstein was first exposed, it became clear that his so-called friends weren't just bystanders. No, they were active participants, people who benefited from his ability to cover up dirt, exchange favors, and silence those who posed a threat to the system. The same thing is happening right now with Combs. We're seeing lawsuits stacking up against him, accusations of sex trafficking, exploitation, and even violent coercion. Yet despite the severity of these claims, the wheels of justice move slowly for the elite, because there's too much at stake for those who've been complicit in these activities to let the truth come out. Behind the scenes, you can bet that strings are being pulled to minimize the fallout. Powerful figures from the entertainment industry, politics, and business are undoubtedly working overtime to distance themselves from Combs, just like they did with Epstein. The question we need to ask ourselves is, who's protecting him? You see, this isn't just about one man. It's about protecting an entire class of individuals who've profited from human exploitation for years. This class has always used their wealth, influence, and connections to shield themselves from accountability. Look at how Epstein's death was labeled a suicide under extremely questionable circumstances. The truth is dangerous to these people. And now, with Combs facing serious charges, the elites are scrambling to rewrite the narrative, just like they did with Epstein. The elite's endgame has always been control. They use media, law enforcement, and political power to ensure that they stay at the top, no matter what. We're seeing this right now in how the mainstream media has carefully managed the story surrounding Combs, making sure the more disturbing aspects of his crimes are downplayed. It's the same old trick they used with Epstein, pushing the narrative that these are just isolated incidents and not part of a larger web of exploitation. But we know better. Combs' case is not just about one man's downfall. It's a symbol of a much larger system that stretches across industries and borders. It's the same system that protected Epstein, and it's the same system that will continue to exploit the vulnerable until we shine a light on all of it. As more victims come forward, the cracks in this system are growing, but make no mistake, the elites are doing everything they can to cover their tracks. Here's where we are now. With every new revelation about Combs, we get closer to exposing the entire rotten structure. Epstein's downfall was just the beginning, and now we're seeing the continuation of that battle with the exposure of Combs' horrific actions. But don't be fooled. This system is not going to give up easily. The real question is, how many more elites are hiding in the shadows, waiting for their time to come? We, the people, must keep pushing for the truth, because if we don't, they will continue to control us through deception and fear. We have to ask ourselves, who else is out there, operating under the radar, just like Combs and Epstein once did? The fight for truth is far from over.
Man named Intense Productions walks alone, follows Christ, and the path he's shown. In the night where shadows glow, battles demons, flesh and bone.